Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the middle of healthcare fiascos, a meth crisis, the Premier meddling in crown corporations, this government has brought forward a bill to break a lease on a single building at 800 Adele. And Madam Speaker, the government's story does not add up. They've said the building was vacant, but they also said there were programs there until early this year. The Minister of Finance said the facility was never appropriate for childcare, but the province had children there for 9 years, including 3 years under this government. If the facility was never appropriate for childcare, why did this government tolerate having any children there at all? And did anyone from the government order the agency that was caring for children there to vacate the premises earlier this year?
The Honourable First Minister.
I appreciate any question from the member that doesn't pertain to larger office space, Madam Speaker. The fact is that the previous government, desperate to deal with a serious concern, dealt with it inappropriately, and we are correcting the issue.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Second Opposition on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, the Premier talks a lot about his concerns about the rule of law being undermined, but it always seems to be to justify his own actions. That while his behaviour is bad, someone else's is worse. But two wrongs don't make a right, Madam Speaker. The Premier said the lesson for businesses for his passing a law to break a contract should be don't enter into an indefensible contract at the behest of a government that is misguided in its efforts. Does the Premier realize that on this basis, virtually every agreement he has ever signed could be declared null and void?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, it's not a pleasant thing to have to confront a mistake that someone has made, and the previous government made a significant mistake, and we're correcting that. But you know, as far as keeping promises, I mean, the member is constantly telling us about how wonderful the federal government is, yet they ran on certain promises, like balancing the books. Of course, they didn't say they'd do it. They said it would happen on its own. But they did also promise democratic reform. They didn't deliver on that one. In fact, it's very difficult to name a promise that was kept, Madam Speaker. So I encourage the member to look at the record, understand that when a mess is made by a previous government, the incoming government has an option to correct it, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Here. The Honourable Leader of the Second Opposition on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill is part of a larger problem with NDP and PC governments and their policies for years, because while in power, it's not just enough for them to reward their friends, but they go out of their way to punish people they see as their opponents. The NDP passed a bill to cancel a VLT contract with Assiniboia Downs a number of years ago, and in a characteristic act of projection, the Premier described it at the time as arbitrary and belligerent. Now, Assiniboia Downs, which won a lawsuit, is getting $20 million from this government. Does the Premier recognize that what he's doing is really no different than what the NDP did?
The Honourable First Minister.
I recognize that we're standing up for Manitoba taxpayers and Manitoba citizens, Madam Speaker, and I recognize the federal Liberal government knows how to punish its opponents, but also its friends. And Madam Speaker, I recognize also that we will stand up for the rule of law, and we continue to do so. And I would encourage the federal government to do the same. And Madam Speaker, I would say that the member has been at least clear that he wants higher PST, he wants higher carbon taxes on Manitobans, and he wants a larger subsidy for his political party. And I encourage him to go to the doors with all three positions.